Brandon Astle is the play-by-play broadcaster of the 2025 Calder Cup champions, the Abbotsford Canucks. Brandon has a lengthy play-by-play career in the BCHL with Langley and Chilliwack, and the longest-serving broadcaster since the AHL has come to Abbotsford, having called games for both the Abbotsford Heat and now the Abbotsford Canucks. I caught up with Brandon this summer a few weeks following the Canucks won the Calder Cup, and I began our conversation by asking Brandon, the Abbotsford Canucks are Calder Cup champions. How does that sound?
It sounds pretty darn cool, Eddie. Pretty amazing ride, and still hasn't really sunk in, to be honest with you.
It's the middle of July when we record this. How has the last 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it's been, since the Abbotsford Canucks defeat Charlotte for that championship, how's it all gone for you, and how's the experience been for you?
Well, Eddie, I always go back to the players and the staff that are the real stars of the show. There's now 30 new Calder Cup champions. There wasn't a single one on that team that won a Calder Cup before they beat Charlotte. They had a Stanley Cup winner, as we know, in Sammy Blais. The only Calder Cup winner was behind the bench in Manny Malhotra while he played, and the guy standing to my right, Landon Ferraro, who's doing the color when he won with Grand Rapids. So just reflecting on everybody that's won in their journeys to get that ring on their finger, which they'll get in October. And just the amazing ride it was all season long. Like, as you know, there's a lot of trials and tribulations. It's not always smooth sailing. There's definitely going to be some low points of the season and questioning, is everything going to go as planned? But at the end of the day, the team really came together thanks to the leadership of Manny Malhotra and his staff, and bought into his systems. And at the end of the day, Eddie, the players put their egos aside and their stats aside and really just wanted to win this thing for one another. And that's exactly what happened.
You mentioned past experience of guys either winning the Stanley Cup or the Calder Cup, and I've always thought of the term and the use of the word experience to be a little interesting, because you don't get experience until you go through the experience. And, you can definitely lean on it if you have past experience to lean on in the moment. But who do you think would have been the guys on that team to realize things are going pretty well for this team? We got something special here, whether it's in the regular season or key points in time in the playoffs, to say, I'm going to help take control of this thing and help get us through a certain situation. Who do you think were the guys that sort of, put it on their back to help the team get through certain points in time of this run, say the regular season or even during the playoff run?
Well, look at the guys that were in Abbotsford for most of the year, if not the entire season, and it's their leadership group. Chase Waters, who wasn't ever on a long playoff run in the AHL, but he's been the captain for the last couple of years now, leads by example. He seems like someone who's been there, done that, had a great Western Hockey League career with Saskatoon. Didn't put up gaudy numbers, but still got his number retired, which just shows you all you need to know about him. Guillaume Brisebois on the back end, it's almost like it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup every time he suits up. The players just love being his teammate and seeing him battle and kind of drag the team into the fight. Again, a guy that didn't have any long AHL Calder Cup playoff runs under his belt, but with his type of style, you would think he did. Sammy Blais, as I just mentioned, he's been to the top of the summit, winning a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup final. Been there, done that, but at the same time, speaking to him throughout the playoff run, he's still got a lot of nerves. He wanted to win that Calder Cup so badly, and there were young guys that he showed the way, like Ty Mueller, Kirill Kudratsev, Jonathan Lecker-Mackey. I mean, talk about a great guy to learn from of what goes into preparing as a professional in the spring and hopefully into the summer. So those are just the three guys that I think about off the top of my head.
Sammy Blais obviously was known for throwing a lot of big hits throughout the course of the season, scored some big goals along the way. When you were watching him progress throughout the season, when did you really say, I'm watching a former Stanley Cup champion use that experience and bring it to this Abbotsford Canucks group?
Well, he had a tough start to the season, Eddie. He missed the first few months early on, so didn't get off to a great start, and really found his game in the new year. And then it didn't really take long for him to shake off the rust, which you thought, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. He's been injured before. That's obviously been a concern when he was with the New York Rangers and St. Louis Blues. And he probably learned from those past experiences of what he needs to do to get himself ready and make sure he's 100%, not 80, not 90, 100% before he gets back on the ice. And I know he put a lot of work in behind the scenes in the gym and in treatment to get himself in tip-top shape. And when he hit the ground running in early 2025, he did not look back. He's just an absolute menace to play against. And you could tell the respect he had from his teammates because he got a lot of guys going each and every night. His first shift, he was looking to eliminate the competition with his body contact. And you know what that leads to the crowd. They love Sammy Blais and can see what goes into his overall game. And just in playoff time, he took his game to another level, was arguably the best forward all playoffs long. And that's just talking about his offense. He was awesome on the power play. He was on the third line, if you want to call it that, with Jujhar Khaira and Nate Smith, who were put together in the second round and really got the Canucks past Coachella Valley and didn't look back. And Sammy was a big play driver on that line. And obviously Artur Shilov's one playoff MVP, but I'm sure a close second with Sammy Blais.
And you mentioned the way he was physical, and, it obviously brought some guys along. Who do you think would follow in his footsteps and felt, I can throw a few more big hits, and just grew 6 inches taller and added 20 more pounds of muscle because Sammy Blais is throwing his weight around in the playoffs? I can do this too because he's on my team.
One that stands out is Tristan Nielsen, a former Vancouver Giant who always had that kind of aggressive mindset. But you see him in the playoffs watching Sammy, I think that kind of oozed into his game. And Tristan laid some absolute massive hits that got the crowd going at home when they were playing at Abbotsford Center. So he's definitely one. On the back end, Kirill Kudryavtsev, I felt, got a bit more aggressive when he kind of felt more comfortable in his own skin. He was scratched throughout the regular season, sat a couple times in the playoffs, but then Manny couldn't take him out after the way he was playing, and a lot of that was due to his aggressiveness and taking the body, clearing guys out in front of the net. And when I'm watching Sammy Blais do what he does, I want to go out there and throw a hit. It seems so easy, but it's not. And it just kind of trickled down throughout the entire team. I mentioned a couple names just there, Nielsen and Kudryavtsev, but it really was the team taking on that be the hunter, not the hunted mentality. And,
a championship run like that is so good for players' development. They get experience in very, very valuable situations over the course of 2.5 months of hockey, however long the run was. But what do you think a run like that can do for, say, as you mentioned, a Kudryavtsev, an Archie Baines, a Ty Mueller, Max Sasson, etc., for guys that are going to be pushing for NHL careers and, NHL employment a year or two down the road as they really grow into their games?
It's absolutely massive, and I know that speaking to Ryan Johnson, he thought that playing in the Calder Cup playoffs was almost 5 games of the regular season for someone's development. Don't quote me on that. That's just something that he was a big believer in putting players in those types of positions in the Calder Cup playoffs. I mean, you look at a guy like Ty Mueller, had 0 playoff games before this year. Obviously, he's a rookie. Now he's got over 20. Same with Kudryavtsev. Archie Baines had 10 to 12, and now he's got over 30. Max Sasson has over 30. Linus Karlsson over 30. So those guys have been there through the battle. They know what it takes to reach the top, and I think that it is going to be huge for their development going forward because when the going gets tough, you really can find out about a player and their makeup, and now that they've been through that, it's only going to lead to success down the line, you would hope. There's no guarantees. At the end of the day, it's going to be up to them if they're going to stick in the NHL, but they'll always have that Calder Cup run to fall back on. Hey, I'm a champion. I got to remember what it took to get there because things are going to be tough when they get to the NHL. There's going to be some dark days. They're going to be in their own head, but you still have that fallback of being you know what? That Calder Cup run was special. I took my game to another level, and hopefully they just kind of remember those habits and bring it to the NHL.
And obviously another young player that's still learning the North American game and going to be the highest profile player coming out of that championship run is Jonathan Lekkerimäki going into his second season with the Vancouver Canucks. What do you think a run like that can do for him? And he was a player that was in and out of the lineup, but as you know, his skill set is obviously a big weapon for that team.
Yeah, I think he learned that it's not easy. Obviously, coming from the big ice in Europe to North America, it's always an adjustment. And to his credit, he had a great regular season, was one of the best goal scorers per game average in the entire American Hockey League. But as you know, Eddie, the game changes when the playoffs start, and you got to adapt to your new surroundings. You're not getting on the power play as much. The whistles are in the pocket of the referees a lot more, and there's going to be a lot more traffic when you have the puck. And he's someone who doesn't need a lot of time and space to let it go, whether it's at a circle or in the slot. And we saw that firsthand in the regular season and a bit in the playoffs. And I know it was tough for him to sit out for as many games as he did in the playoffs, but I think he learned from it, seeing the game in the press box and how things develop and what it takes to get back in the lineup and stay there was something that he saw. And to his credit, when he got back in Game 3 in the Calder Cup Finals, he really looked good. He looked comfortable. He didn't score his first game back, but he had some great puck touches and got more confidence that way. And then in Game 4, he had 2 goals, and the rest is history. So I hope that he goes back to Sweden, knows the work that he needs to put in, hopefully put on more muscle, more strength. Obviously, his offseason is now short already. Instead of going back home in late April or mid-May, he's going back home close to July. So he's got to think of a new off-season plan. It's not going to be easy. Hopefully he's taking some time off, but maybe as we're talking now, we're here in the middle of July. He's probably back training again because camp is going to start in September, in the middle of September. And there's been a lot of guys that he's battling for spots with that have been back training. I know that for sure, whether they're in Abbotsford or Vancouver. And even like his peers around the NHL, they've been training for the last month and a half now probably. So it's a big off-season for him. And now he's got the fallback of being a Calder Cup champion and going through that run, the trials and tribulations. He knows what he's got to do to be a permanent NHLer going forward, and hopefully he has a good camp.
And you touched on it there when he got back in the lineup later in the playoff run and in the final against Charlotte that, there's less space to work with. It's a lot more physical. It's a heavier game in the postseason, no matter what level of hockey it is. And you really have to fight for your ice to get to good scoring spots. And sometimes you have to really, really get your nose dirty in order to score because that shot at the top of the circle is not going to be available in June as opposed to what it was in November. But could you see that adjustment when Lekkerimäki got back in the lineup where he could find that harder ice that wasn't always there earlier in the year?
Absolutely. He was someone who you wondered if he'd be a little gun-shy, jumping into a tough spot, a moving train, if you want to call it that. Like the Calder Cup Finals, getting back in the lineup is a tough environment. And I thought that he put himself in good spots to be successful. And it started in the defensive zone. To play in the NHL, you got to be very reliable in your own end, as you know, Eddie, along the walls and battling for pucks. That's going to be the biggest adjustment for him if he wants to be an NHLer, is to win those 50-50s. If he does that on a consistent basis, he'll put himself in a really good position to be a full-time Vancouver Canuck, because we saw it in spurts when he got called up. He looked really good. He was awesome on the power play. He looked comfortable. And we know with his skill set and that shot that he is going to do some damage at that level, but it comes down to being a responsible 200-foot player. Obviously, he's still got a lot to learn in that regard, and I think he learned a ton this year. I was actually very impressed with what he did in the defensive zone. Like in that Game 3, like he helped the team break out easy. He was making strong defensive plays. He was in support of his centerman, of his defense, because he knew if he wanted to play in Game 4, Manny Malhotra wanted to see him take care of his own end, and he did that. And sure enough, the hockey gods look after him. He got 2 goals in Game 4. So I think that he knows like he's going to take some slashes and some cross checks to the back in the playoffs. He can expect that if he's an NHLer in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So the fact that he went through it, I know he wanted to play every night, but I think when he looks back, maybe in 5 to 10 years, he'll be thankful that he had that experience to learn when he wasn't in the lineup.
Now, for you as a broadcaster watching a playoff run like that, no team will go through a championship run and just run the table like you used to see back in the 80s when the Oilers were doing their thing, or Montreal, or any other level. Like, you got to find ways to win 16 tight hockey games. A lot more 2-1, 3-1 with an empty netter, 4-2 type hockey games as opposed to higher scoring affairs. How much did you learn and grow to appreciate watching those little details that you needed to do to win over the course of those 2 months that got the team eventually to where it did? And how much you really grow to appreciate that the longer that playoff run went?
Yeah, you truly appreciate the grind. And the players who are going through that the first time, that was the biggest eye-opener for them. You're not practicing a whole lot in the playoffs. You're pretty much just playing games, watching film, and really taking care of your body. I mean, Eddie, the amount of players I saw trying to walk, I should say, after a game is countless. Sammy Blake could barely walk in the Stanley Cup or in the Calder Cup Finals. Like, he couldn't bend his knees. It was remarkable that he put himself in a position to be ready to go each and every night in the playoffs. But after games, when the adrenaline wears off, it wears on you, man. And he wasn't the only one. There's a lot of guys that played through a lot of things where in the regular season they would have been sat down for. So just seeing what those guys were able to do, and go all the way while probably being like maybe 50% at best for some of them. There's obviously a few that I wouldn't say went unscathed, but didn't have to battle some injuries like other guys did. That's just the way it goes. So just to see that and it all like come to fruition at the end, it's got to feel really good for those players. Like it was all worth it. Yeah, this offseason might suck a bit more and have to recover and maybe not get to training as quickly, but you'll have that ring on your finger for the rest of your life. And so just seeing like the grind that they went through, there were some times where you thought, are the wheels going to fall off? Like guys are not able to walk. How are they able to play? But credit to guys like Ross, the trainer for the Abbotsford Canucks, and David Melanchuk, the doctor, and Nathan, the head trainer. They worked overtime to make sure that those players got the treatment they needed to put themselves in a position to succeed. It's not just those players on the ice that are doing their job. It's the behind the scenes, the support staff that you really grow to appreciate as well.
So the 2025 Calder Cup champion Abbotsford Canucks, to quote Wayne Gretzky, they won and they were wounded.
100%. I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the players. In the NHL, the guys do their press conferences after and say what they're battling through. You don't see that in the AHL. Some guys don't want it leaked. Respect that. But I don't know what happened to some of those players. I just know that they were in a battle for almost 2 months, and at the end of the day, they got something to show for it, so that's got to feel really good.
For you, as the season went along and Abbotsford started to really get hot in January and February, and obviously you saw the story of the season and how it all played itself out, and we all know how it finished. But when did you start to see that this Abbotsford Canucks team really did have something special, and that if it all came together, they could really do something?
I thought in the middle of January that they were really building on something. Things weren't going well. After the new year, they were below 500. Obviously, Vancouver had a lot of injuries, so guys were going up and down, but that's just the way it goes in the AHL. You got to have some depth and put some guys in spots that they're not used to, and hopefully it pays off. So I would say mid-January when they rattled off an 8-game winning streak, everyone talks about a 13-gamer in March, but that really set them up in January to be what they actually became. And it was just a matter of the team really buying into Manny's system. I mean, it's all about being selfless. It's all about enjoying the grind, practicing hard, building up good habits. And by that time as well, Eddie, you're starting to see growth in the young guys. Kudratsev, Mueller, Lecker-Mackey, Sasson, Carlson. The list goes on and on. They're a little bit more older. They've been through a half the season. And obviously some of those guys have played some playoff games in the past, but the likes of Kudratsev and Mueller and Lecker-Mackey, this is all new for them. And you can start to see them being more comfortable as things went along. And then by the time March came around, they won 13 games in a row. They really put the league on blast, and they didn't look back. I mean, what they did in March and April and put themselves in a position to get the second seed in the Pacific, which is so tough. It just was awesome to see the hard work they put in behind the scenes in the practice in the film room really start to pay off, which led well going to the playoffs.
I mean, we're almost 18 minutes into this, and there's still so many things that we can talk about. We haven't even brought up Manny Malholtra's coaching, Archer Shilov's, Linus Karlsson. Let's go through some of these guys, and we'll begin with Manny Malhotra. Why did this team respond to the way Manny Malhotra coached this team, and why can he relate so well to the players? And we only see little tiny microcosms of how he interacts with the team that gets out on social media, but obviously they bought into what he's selling. Like, what makes Manny Malhotra tick as a head coach and get the players to buy into what he's selling?
Well, his message never changed from day one at training camp till the end of the Calder Cup final. And there's a clip in the dressing room after they popped the champagne and were celebrating the Calder Cup. Manny Malhotra had the floor. He stopped the guys. And I don't know what this all means, but I have a feeling what it means. He said something that'll stick with me for the rest of my life, and I know fans loved it on social media. He said, I'm going to tell you something that you don't want to hear from your partner, your friends, anybody. I told you so. And the guys were just like, oh, like they knew what he was talking about, and I think I know what he was talking about. And it was if he just put in the work, the big picture will shine. And he pointed to the board, the tower where they put the pucks in after each win. They got it 16 slots, and there's only to be one team at the end of the playoffs that fills all 16 holes. And then Manny was there. Chase Waters got the final puck, put it into the tower, and Manny pointed to that. He said, what you guys did, that is so hard to do. You guys appreciate the work that went into this, and you guys are the champions. And it just like, I got chills talking about it right now because his message from day one was always stick to the process, try to get better each and every day. And sometimes early on in the season, a lot of things are happening. Young guys are trying to get acclimated to a new system. Manny's trying to get acclimated. There's two new assistant coaches, a brand new goaltending coach in Justin Pogge, new video coach Andrew Shaw from the Chilliwack Chiefs, shout out. So the staff was still trying to get used to one another. And there were some good moments, October to December. There were some not so great moments. And then, like I mentioned, when January came around, everybody was like, okay, we got something special here. And then Jordan Smith, one of the assistant coaches, said to me in the playoffs on an off day, he said, like, even after a loss in March or in February, he's like, we got a wagon. These guys don't know that we have a very good team. They just don't know what they have in that locker room yet. And eventually they all came together due to the coaching staff preaching every single day of working hard in practice, taking care of yourself, and not worrying about the outside noise. And if you're going to get a call-up and whatnot, all you can control is what you do each and every day. And sure enough, look what happened. They're Calder Cup champions.
And now let's go to the goaltending position in Artur Shilovs. And the day after we record this is when he got traded to Pittsburgh for Chase Stillman, and also a draft pick was involved in that transaction as well. But just talk about Artur Shilovs and his season and his playoff run, and just what did you see? And, you know, he's had three really notable moments in his career or experiences so far, whether it be guiding Latvia to the bronze medal at the Worlds a number of years ago, the Canucks playoff run in 2024, obviously Game 7 losing in the second round to Edmonton, and now this. What do you think all this experience will do for him, and what did you see in him as a goaltender throughout the course of this playoff run?
Well, the on-ice stuff, no question about it. He's a big game goaltender. He kind of has that clutch gene that everyone wishes they have. And you mentioned the three different situations now where in the springtime he has really came up clutch. And he might have saved his best performance for these Calder Cup playoffs. I mean, every single night you knew what you're getting from him. That's all you can ask, you know, from your goalie. Manny said after the team won, Arturs was the best player on the ice every single night. And there was only one hiccup, which was Game 2, the second round of Coachella Valley, when he got pulled. That was probably more so to wake up the team. Then Tolopilo came in. They tied the game, ended up taking the lead. They ended up losing in overtime. That was the only blemish on Artur's playoff run. Other than that, he was all-world. I can only imagine just like being on that bench and seeing him make some of those saves that he did in big moments, what that does for the team's confidence. And it just kind of oozed through everybody. And just the fact that he was able to – Vancouver's such a tough market to play in, as we know. He's able to block out that noise. And he didn't have a great stretch when he got called up this year in Vancouver. We know the numbers. It's talked about. He knows he could be better. He goes down to Abbotsford, doesn't pout, puts in the work, and it leads to the success he had in the spring and in the summertime with the Abbotsford Canucks. Now, as a person, very quiet guy, very motivated, very determined. He's someone where I'm done my after-game duties, doing the post-game show and whatnot. It's like half an hour has gone by. I go down to the bowels to get to my car. I got to walk past the dressing room. Each and every time, he's on the bike, putting in the work. There's some other guys with him for sure, but most of the time, it was just him by himself. And he wouldn't know if he won 5-0 or the team lost. He just kept that same mindset, and him and I had this, maybe he didn't know it was a thing, but like every time I walked by him, I'd say, I have nothing to say to you. I just kept walking. He'd just have that little arty smile, like he had a 5-0 shutout. He was unreal.
I get it. You don't want to talk to the goalies ever during a playoff run, especially the deeper that you go. Just you're on your own, man.
Yeah, sometimes I'd say, don't want to hear it. Sometimes I'd say, walking, just like we
how you doing, Artie?
Yeah, I wouldn't even say how you doing. Just like, I'm going to my car. See you later. And he was so well liked in the locker room. He really, really did not take for granted the support he got in Abbotsford. He loved that crowd. Whenever I asked him about it in the media, his eyes would just light up. And I know it means the world to him that he was able to deliver a championship. And I know it's hard to see him leave. But at the end of the day, he's going to a great situation for him in Pittsburgh, where he'll hopefully get a lot more NHL games.
Is he going to be the guy there now?
I don't know. Why not? I mean, they got Tristan Jarry.
And they traded Nedeljkovic.
Nedeljkovic, he's gone. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, unless they do something else here in the summer, I would hope that he's got a great chance to make the team and maybe split time with Jarry. I don't know what their plans are with him. It's been a tough stretch for him, unfortunately. And he's going to a great spot, to a team where he'll probably see a lot of rubber every night. He'll be able to develop. And we've seen him steal games in the past. Why can't he do it for Pittsburgh?
And I mentioned a few minutes ago, Linus Karlsson as well, another guy who had a big, big impact for this Abbotsford Canucks championship run. And we saw him, at times throughout the course of the last few years in Vancouver. And you could see an improvement from the Linus Karlsson of the 23-24 season to the 24-25 version of Linus Karlsson in Vancouver. And obviously it really got amplified during this playoff run. And he's a bit of an older player, part of the Jonathan Dahlen trade back in the day. Just, what is Linus Karlsson as a player, and how do you see this playoff run really benefiting him and maybe finding his way as a professional hockey player?
Yeah, so he scored the Calder Cup game-winning goal, Eddie, and I think it's so fitting to come from a guy like him who is the all-time franchise leader in goals and points. He owns a lot of records with the Abbotsford Canucks, and in my opinion, he's graduated now from the AHL. He's ready for his next challenge in the National Hockey League, and I know he's very highly thought of by the Vancouver management. They gave him a one-year, one-way deal. So I think they have plans for him, but at the end of the day, he's got to have a good camp in preseason and prove himself that he can stick, because I don't think there's anything else that he can prove in the American Hockey League. And what it comes down to for him is he takes care of the little details. He's not the biggest guy in the world. I know he kind of looks big, but he's pretty slight. But he really battles hard and is someone that in front of the net, you can rely on him to find that rebound in the corners to win those 50-50s. I know Ryan Johnson says that a lot about him, and Manny Malhotra. He wins 50-50s. A lot of the time behind the net in the corners, he's going to come out with that puck and try to drive it hard to the net. He does not play on the perimeter. He gets a lot of his goals from in tight of the net, tip-ins, rebounds. You rarely see him score on like a slap shot or a snap shot off the rush. He's someone who is going to muck and grind for what he gets. And as a head coach, you love having guys like that. We saw him really come into his own late in the year when he got called to the Vancouver, was a steady force on the third line, put up some points, scored some goals, and his first NHL goal was typical Linus Karl fashion in Nashville in front of the net, scoring in tight, which was great. And I think that this playoff run is going to do a lot for his confidence. He led the playoffs in points and goals, which is a nice feather in his cap, but it's something that he did on the regular with the Abbotsford Canucks over the last few years. So I'm excited for his future. Like you said, he's not young anymore, but he's not old. He's still got a lot more to give and a lot more to prove, and I know he's going to go into the summer back in Sweden with a chip on his shoulder, because he's not a guy that's going to rest on his laurels and think like, hey, I have a spot for me next year in Vancouver. He knows he's got to come in and perform, and I have no doubts that he can do that.
And every player on a team has their own story, and thinking about this Abbotsford team as well, another player that I'm thinking about is Danila Klimovich. He was a second-round pick of the Canucks in 21 or 20.
2021.
2021, and he came straight to Abbotsford, from Europe, and he's been in Abbotsford and hasn't gone back to junior. And obviously he's paid a lot of dues in the American Hockey League, and now he scored some big goals, some overtime winners during this playoff run for Abbotsford. Where's he at as a player?
Yeah, I think that Danila has a skill set that not a lot of guys have. He's big, he can move, and he has a great shot. What it comes down to for him is the 200-foot game, and there was a lot of improvement throughout this year. And now he did face some adversity in the playoffs. He was sat down a couple times, and when he came back in, to his credit, he came up clutch and scored a couple double overtime winners, and it was because of his skill set, that shot, his hands in tight, that got him those massive goals when the team needed it the most. So I think that he learned a lot about himself. Like, he's only 22, and he's one of the all-time leaders in games played. So he's still young. He's still learning. And what I saw as well as the season progressed is he really found a mean streak, which I really liked. He was going after guys when the whistle was blown. He was mucking it up. He wasn't backing down if someone was trying to take him on. Like, you don't see him fight very often, if ever. But he knows that he's a big guy and he can do some damage. And I think if he carries that mindset going forward, it's going to do a lot for him, because, like I mentioned, he could be a bit of a unicorn because of the way that he plays. You can see why he was drafted in the second round. And to the Canucks' credit, they've been very patient with him, and the message has been consistent. It's got to be him sharpening up in the defensive zone, and in the attacking zone, just keep things a little more simple. Yeah, he's got the hands that can pull off some moves, but there's a time and place when to pull it off. Sometimes it's better to dump it in and go after it. You got the size, you got the strength, you got the speed. Not a lot of defenders can handle that. So you saw him really get more comfortable as the season went along. And boy, Eddie, did he party with that cup. He still may be partying with it right now. He's definitely the MVP for me of the Calder Cup celebration. I didn't know he had that side to him. He was just so happy to win, and it was awesome to see because you mentioned a lot of trials and tribulations with him.
I thought it was the broadcaster and the head coach that were the biggest partiers on that team. Could the Calder Cup be overseas right now in Europe with him?
He's still here, as far as I know.
Okay.
He took it to his barber.
Okay.
I saw him post a video, so that was cool to see.
Do you see NHL games in his future? If so, when?
I think it's definitely in his future. It's just a matter of consistency, like I mentioned, and the message coming from Manny and Ryan Johnson is just sharpen up your tools, be stronger in the defensive zone. There's no doubt what he can do in the offensive zone. People forget he led the team in goals in the regular season. He had 25. That's a lot in the AHL. So there's something to work with there. And if he can get off to a good start next year in Abbotsford and prove that he deserves a look in the NHL, I would not be surprised if he got called up.
Now let's lighten things up a little bit and just take me through what are the games that you remember that are just going to be some of the most memorable of this playoff run. Easy to say Game 6 in Charlotte or when they beat Texas to advance to the Calder Cup final. Whether it's the game itself or just the experience, what are some of the games that will always stick out in your memory and your experience as you think about this whole Calder Cup experience?
I go back to Game 3 in the first round. The Canucks could have been out. It was a best of 3, a short series with Tucson. It was 1-1 going into Game 3. It was a game they needed to have, and boy, did they perform. I still think overall, from a 60-minute perspective, that was their best performance out of any game they played. They beat the Roadrunners 5-0. And I heard Phil DiGiuseppe mention after they won, that was the game when guys really started to believe. They're like, you know what, we have something here. We just beat up a very good Tucson team 5-0 when we needed it the most. And the rest is history. And another opportunity, which was a winner-go-home game, was in the third round in Colorado. They win 5-0 again. And you really saw that confidence really start to come back. And so those are the two games that I'm going to remember the most because they needed guys to step up, and everybody did. I mean, 5-0 in a closeout game is hard to do. They did that twice. Obviously, having the goaltending from Shelovs helps, but everybody chipped in during those big wins. And just from an atmosphere and environment standpoint, I mean, things really kicked up a notch in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals against the Texas Stars. The Stars coming in with the offense that they did, absolutely dummying teams and outscoring their problems. The Canucks knew that they had a lot on their plate, and I think what they saw from the fans just from the opening coming on the ice in the first few shifts was like, you know what, this is awesome. Sammy Blais was being a menace. The crowd was going nuts, and just to get to see the crowd in the towels swinging around was something I'll never forget.
Can't also, you brought him up as well, and Dan Ricci will be mad, but Phil DiGiuseppe, I mean, he's now moved on to Winnipeg, but again, his impact on this run as well for this team.
Yeah, you can't say enough about the leadership, and he was the oldest guy in the team, Eddie, when they won the Calder Cup, and you wouldn't know it just by the way he plays the game. He's still got a lot more to give, and the one thing that I really noticed about Phil, being around him the last 2 years, he takes preparing very seriously. I get to the rink around 3:30 for a 7 p.m. face-off. He's there before me. You don't see players at the rink that early, and he has a whole process that he puts himself in to get ready before puck drop, and so that's something I really admire about Phil. Like, he was sent down from Vancouver. Why not just pack it in? Why not just show up 2 hours before, go through the motions, collect your paycheck, and out you go? Phil did not take on that mentality. He still knows that he has a lot more to prove, and he, at one point during the season, when he was sent down, he was out of the lineup. He was a healthy scratch, Eddie. Phil DiGiuseppe, who had such a great year with Rick Tocchet when the Canucks went to the second round of the playoffs. So that was a big eye-opener for him. He had to earn his way back into Manny Malhotra's lineup, which Manny had no ties to him. He treated him just like a rookie called up from the ECHL. You got to prove it. And so Phil put in the work off the ice. He sat out a bunch of games, and when he got back in, he didn't come out. And that just is a testament to the hard work that he puts in and the leadership that he's shown to the young guys. I know that it just meant so much for him to win that Calder Cup against the team that drafted him.
Now, take me a little bit behind the scenes of what you're willing to share and what you're willing to discuss. But when the team advanced to the Calder Cup final, beating Texas at home in Game 6, or obviously when they won it all, beating Charlotte in Game 6, just how much did you enjoy those nights, and how much fun did you have off the air, just as a broadcaster going through all those games and experiencing those situations and seeing a team succeed? Like, how much did you really try to savor it? And this is a unique experience that you had for yourself.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Eddie, it could be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I hope it's not, but you never know. It is so tough to go through that grind. I'm talking from the player standpoint, and perform the way they did. Like, I was exhausted by the end of it. I can only imagine how these players felt each and every night going out there and trying to perform. And so just to see how the team was able to come together and really feed off one another and buy into everything that Manny was preaching, like I've mentioned so far throughout this interview a lot. It's just sometimes the stars got to align, but at the end of the day, you got to have a team that wants it more than the other. And when the Canucks were able to knock off Colorado in Game 5 and beat Texas in Game 6 after being down 2-0 in that game, I'm sure a lot of people thought there was going to be Game 7 the next night. There was no buffer day. They were going to play Game 7 right after Game 6. And the Canucks were down 2 goals late in the second period. Bain scored to make it 2-1 before going to the break. And the Canucks came out in the third, and they're like, there's no Game 7. They absolutely dominated those Texas Stars. And to hear the noise that was being created from the fans while that was all going on, like the hometown guys having an impact, Jujhar Khaira, Arshdeep Bainji scoring in that game, it really just took things to another level. So just unforgettable moments from being on the air, describing the action, to behind the scenes, going down there near the locker room and just hearing the guys hooting and hollering and appreciating how far they come. But at the same time, there's still a job that needed to be done. They needed 4 more wins after beating Texas, and we're facing a team in Charlotte who swept their last 2 opponents. And so the favorites going into that finals, Eddie, were the Charlotte Checkers, and rightfully so. And Abbotsford had them on the ropes. They won 3 out of the first 4 and able to get it done in Game 6. And to see just the emotion on the guys' faces, I remember saying to Ryan Johnson in the locker room, the champagne was flowing. The guys were dancing to songs, all sorts of genres. It's amazing what one championship can do for adults to act like kids. And that was their time just to let it rip.
Do you think you'll have a better night in North Carolina than that one?
No. You will not have a better night than winning the Calder Cup in Charlotte, North Carolina at Bojangles Coliseum.
I love that name, Bojangles.
It's something special. It is.
How was the plane ride home?
You know what? Pretty subdued. The guys obviously got after it, and it was an early flight home. And the guys were preparing for that night. They're still going out, and they knew that the crowd was going to be there to greet them at the airport, and wanted to be on their best behavior and let the crowd touch the cup and give them high fives, sign autographs, take pictures. So it was a pretty subdued plane ride, and rightfully so, because they went after it throughout the entire night and knew they had a couple long days ahead of them.
How much did you have fun in the days and nights afterwards, and the celebration back in Abbotsford? I know they had a rally and everything like that. How much did you enjoy the days, your first few days after the Canucks won it all?
Yeah, it was still kind of surreal like it is right now, just thinking of what the team had to go through to get to the Calder Cup, and having that opportunity to celebrate with the fans at the rally at Abbotsford Centre was very, very unique. Obviously, it would have been great to win it at home in Game 5. It goes to overtime. Man, just thinking about that. Like, they could have won it at home, Eddie. They hit a post.
Yeah.
Jujhar Khaira was robbed in tight.
Yeah.
Kokkonen played unreal to preserve his team that Game 5 win. And so just to come back to Abbotsford Centre in a completely different setting with the stage set up and a sold-out crowd, it was great to see the players get the send-off that they deserved. And I know the celebration there went longer than the night as well. And I know, unfortunately, a couple players had to go home before that celebration, but I know a couple guys extended their stays to enjoy the Calder Cup celebrations.
It's well worth an extra couple of days in Abbotsford, isn't it?
I mean, why not? Why not push your flight a few days back? I mean, you're only going to be with this group once. No matter what happens, there's always going to be change, whether you win the cup or come dead last. There's going to be some new bodies coming in and out, and just knowing that those guys will have their cup on their name on the cup forever is going to be special.
Well, Brandon, I want to be very, very respectful of your time. We've been chatting for about 40 minutes. I could easily go a lot longer with you, and I really do appreciate this. I'm really happy that you had the experience that you did, and, you know, how much are you savoring this whole thing and, you know, just relishing everything that you've gone through and everything that you've experienced and this whole Calder Cup experience?
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I don't know what next year's going to be like. Obviously, the Abbey Canucks have a bit of a target on their back now, being the defending champs, and I just think back of, like, again, like, so much goes into putting a team together from Ryan Johnson's standpoint. So much goes into how the team's going to play from Manny Malhotra and his staff, and the amount of turnover that we saw this year, like 16 different players suiting up for Abbotsford and Vancouver, that's just a massive number. And the fact that they're able to overcome that and skating with a Calder Cup is something that myself and the players are going to remember forever. And sometimes I got to step back and be like, you know what, Brandon, you're not a player. Let the players are the stars. You've been through it, Eddie. You've won our RBC Cup with the Coquitlam Express.
Burnaby, but
you go through everything with the team, like you see Burnaby Express.
Yeah.
That's right. Sorry.
The second one was in Coquitlam.
Cup, yeah, with
the second
Coquitlam. And, like, you got to step back and think, like, you're just a broadcaster. You were on the ice. Like, you know what the team went through.
We didn't block a shot.
No.
We didn't lose a tooth. We
You're
didn't
not
break
the
a bone.
star. You're not the star of the show.
We just had the best view possible of these guys playing unbelievable hockey and giving it their all.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, you kind of feel like a small part of the team. And obviously, a lot of fans would have loved to have been in the rink at Abbotsford Center, but there's only 7,000 seats, and people were tuning in to hear what was going to happen and really appreciate the fan support. I mean, to hear where the fans are tuning in, like you heard me, Eddie, every game in the inbox, people were tuning in from like Brazil and Spain and all over the globe. People went camping and had like setups on their TV listening and watching.
We had a post-game call from Australia.
Yeah.
It was like Tuesday morning on a game on a Monday night back here.
It's like, what? So like the reach that Canucks Nation has is just incredible. Had great experiences meeting so many fans throughout, and something I'll cherish for the rest of my life.
And one thing I also think about, and you kind of touched on it there, but at the end of the day, it's the players on the ice, it's the coaches in the room, it's the managers, it's the hockey ops staff. That's the circle. And you're on the periphery, and you got to earn your way in. You got to earn their respect. You got to follow, how they do things, and there's a way that things need to be done. But when you go through an experience like that, the players see you on a regular basis. They get to know you. How much did the players bring you in to that circle, and you're one of us, and make you feel a part of this Calder Cup championship?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about the players and the personalities on that team. I try to stay out of their way. These are professional athletes. I'm not going to go up to them and be like, hey, how you doing, and all that kind of stuff. If the time's right and the guys are willing to chat, whether it's in the meal room or after a practice or even after a game, there's some guys that are going to be open to chatting, and most of the time it's not even about hockey, Eddie. As you know, how's the family doing? Atu Ratu was telling me about his new puppy he had and what it's like. Unfortunately, when I got sick early on, he's telling me about the battle of going back with the vet and all that. And that's not stuff I'm going to bring up on the air. That's personal stuff. But I'm telling you now because Atu did talk about it eventually during another through another media avenue. So I'll cherish those moments, just talking to Guillaume Brisebois in Coachella Valley, him telling me how much his family listens and appreciates what I do, and had such great things to say. I never really thought you guys have parents that listen to the game. You and I called junior games in the past. Obviously, our main listeners are the players' parents, and rightfully so. These are 16 to 20-year-olds. You kind of forget, these pro hockey players, their parents are going to still listen too. It doesn't matter if they're in junior, minor hockey, pros. They're going to listen to every broadcast. They're far away from their kid. And so just to hear, I met Max Sassen's dad at a bar in Texas. Him and I still text to this day. And I'll never forget what Max did in the locker room after the celebrating the Calder Cup. I'm kind of staying on the outside, what am I going to do here? Yeah, I'm having a couple Coors Lights, but do I want to go in the locker room? Am I going to cross a line here? And I remember Max, they're handing out the cup, they're filling up the champagne, and everyone's getting their time sipping it out of the cup, and the trainers went, and staff went, and all that, and I wasn't expecting to get a sip out of the cup. I heard Max Sassen say to Chase Waters, "It's Astle's turn. It's Astle's turn," and I'm just am I gonna get my chance here? What am I gonna do? And then all of a sudden I start chanting my name, and I'm getting champagne dumped all over my face. I don't think a single drop got in my mouth, but it's just little things like that which I'll remember for the rest of my life.
So Max Sassen's the guy that handed you the Calder Cup.
Max Sassen was a big cog in me getting a sip out of that cup for sure.
And how much did that just make you feel satisfied of everything that you went through just to have that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a unique experience, Eddie, winning it on the road. Obviously, it would have been great to win it at home and experience with the crowd and the players' families and stuff, but there wasn't a lot of people that went out to Charlotte the next night on the flight. Right? It was just the team. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was kind of unique in a way. It was just the guys and the staff that were all together celebrating. There were a few parents that flew out for sure. Max's dad was there. Tristan Nielsen's dad was there. There were some others as well. So that was cool to see them celebrate with their kids. But for the most part, it was just the team. And that made it really cool. And just from going from the on ice, celebrating the cup, to the locker room, And then they had, like, out of the blue, there was this unreal setup at Bojangles I didn't know existed. It was like an attachment to the rink. There was this banquet hall with a private DJ, an open bar, a full buffet. It was just like, you know what? They probably had to plan for this now that I think about it.
Do you think the American Hockey League had a hand in that?
I'm sure they probably did. But Ben Goodman's the team services manager.
Okay.
He does an unreal job. He's always thinking 2 steps ahead. So I'm sure he had a big part of that. And so we danced the night away until about 2 a.m., and then usually there's 2 buses that took the team and the coaching staff to the rink and the hotel, and then like the other staff like myself, a few trainers, social media people. We all had our separate buses in Charlotte. There were 2 buses waiting for us at 2 a.m. Everybody got onto one bus. There were people standing in the aisles. And another cool thing that I keep forgetting about, obviously a lot went on, as you know, Eddie. We were on the bus. They were playing like Fergie at one point and like We Are the Champions. And then just before we got back to a bar stayed open late for us, which is great, past 2 a.m. Before we got to the bar, I don't know who was behind it. They played my last winning call.
Oh, really?
Over the speakers. And I still get chills thinking about it now. And then just hearing like my call, because it was the first time I heard it.
Mm-hmm.
First time these players are hearing it. Just blasting over the bus speakers. And then the players just like jumping on me like I hit a walk-off home run. It was unreal, man.
How long is the bus ride from Bojangles to your hotel?
10 minutes, not that long.
Yeah, but the best 10 minutes.
It felt long, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And it was a very fun 10 minutes, and everyone got off the bus and went into this bar that stayed up open late, and the celebrations continued.
How many people do you think were on that bus? How much was it over capacity?
Don't want to throw anyone under the bus.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
Let's just say a lot, Eddie. I think enough for everyone to have a seat, but no one wanted to sit.
I totally understand. Totally understand. Plus, you added another passenger as well, the Calder Cup.
We had some hardware on there that everyone wanted to get a piece of, so rightfully so.
I mean, you got to give that thing a seat of its own, right?
It does. You need to take care of it.
Got to give it respect. Well, Brandon, I mean, this was awesome. And like I said, I'm happy you had this experience, and I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. And all the best to you in the future, and really thanks for doing this.
Always a pleasure catching up, Eddie. Thanks for having me on.
That's Brandon Astle, play-by-play broadcaster of the 2025 Calder Cup champion, Abbotsford Canucks. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this interview. Please check out the other interviews on this channel if you want more content. Please like and subscribe. I'm Eddie Gregory.